Hello, welcome back. It is week 160 on Out on the Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host, as always, Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Jeff, this one is shaping up to be an absolute creamer. And I, for one, can't wait to get into it. But first, Jeff, I would be remiss in my duty if I did not inform the people that the end is near. Okay? All things are coming to an end. Entropy, the death of the universe. Now, when I say it's coming, I didn't necessarily mean tomorrow. I didn't necessarily mean next week, next month, next year. It's coming. And that is quite a lot of uncertainty. But I will tell you what is certain, which is that you can find all of our videos at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Yes, I understand most of you are here right now, but can you really be certain? We've hit upon the theme, uncertainty. No, you can't be sure. You don't know what's real. You don't know what isn't real. Is this a simulation? Is this just your brain firing DMT as you die? You have no idea. So I suggest you just go with it and not worry about that sort of thing. Watch all of our past content, and also don't forget to turn your notifications on, to smash that like button, to make sure you're subscribed, and that the I think I already said the notification bell should be on. Fucking duh. And comments are just so great for the algorithm. It's how we meet all these we're closing in on 2,000 strong, y'all. So get in on the ground floor of this thing. You've had 4 or 5 years to do it. You haven't done it by now. I don't know what the hell to tell you. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what to do with you. And neither does your mother. But she loves you anyway. And so do we. At youtube.com/C/out on that line.
I was trying so hard to hold in my laughter so it wouldn't kick the camera over to me while you were delivering that absolute masterclass of an introduction for yourself. Just when you hit this little turn, like I have just absolutely lost it. I was like ugly laughing over here. That was absolutely wonderful. We need to reinforce, folks. Like, subscribe, let us know how we're doing. Comment. Well, actually, don't let us know how we're doing unless it's to tell us how great we are. That way, you comment that all you want. Tell us what you want to see in our reaction videos. You'll find a bunch of those. Tell us what you want to see us cover. If it's a new album, if it's an old album, one that you think we should revisit. I don't think we've ever thought of doing that, is taking an album from like 2 years ago and revisiting it. Light bulb moment. Look at us go. Tell us what you want to see on the channel. We're going to keep doing what we do, but if there's ways to make it better, we're not so stupid to think that we can't improve. Even the perfect ones have to get better. And that's the way we see ourselves. So I think if you like and subscribe and comment, we're going to become the best version of ourselves. In turn, you're going to become the best version of yourselves. We might not be able to change the world, but we can all change our world.
That was great. That was very inspirational. A great counterpoint to the uncertainty. A lot of confidence in that. I like this. This podcast contains multitudes.
Yeah, we're always firing on all cylinders here. And we have an album that I think we should probably just get right into it, because I'm not sure that I've ever listened to an album quite like this before, at least all the way through. I feel like maybe here and there I've heard music like this a little bit. The band that this guy was previously in, certainly could sound like this. But we're going to talk about Geordie Greep of Black Midi fame and the album The New Sound. And I can't honestly tell you like what genre this is. I can't really, I can tell you what genres it contains, but I don't know if you could pigeonhole this anywhere, because whatever angle you're coming at it from, there is plenty of that there for you throughout this entire album to enjoy the absolute hell out of it. So I don't know how you felt about it, but I felt like I have never listened to an album like this before. And this is one of the most impressive things I've ever heard in my life.
This is the kind of thing for the last couple weeks. There's been this question of like, okay, well, Alex, what do you look for? What are you hoping for? I was kind of like hanging on to hope these last couple episodes, having a good time, having some questions, liking some things, maybe not liking some things so much, but that question of like, what is at the core of your listener profile. What kind of shit are you hoping to run into? This is that shit. This is like a crack of cocaine to me. Just right in the center of all those things I love: authenticity, novelty, timbre, like all of these qualities that just like keep you coming back for more with a song and with an album. And that's how it started for me. Was obviously like, I knew Black Midi. You and I had talked about Black Midi on the show. I don't know if we ever went through with it. I know we both listened to it, but I think we were like, that's be kind of hard to have a discussion about it. And at this point,
Mhm.
I go, no, I think we actually could have,
Mhm.
because we could go all night on this. And the first introduction to it for me was Holy Holy. And that I just remember thinking, this could either be the standout song on the album, which in many ways it is, and everything else is just kind of mid, which it's not. Then it will have been worth it. That song alone, just like, I don't want to overstate it, be like, it really knocked my socks off, but it did, in fact.
Mhm. Yeah, that so Holy Holy was where this album absolutely gets cranking, gets cooking. That is Holy Holy is the song where the first two songs, let me get the names of them correct here. Hold on. So you have Blues and Terra are the first two songs. Now Blues starts out and you kind of get it, you immediately have the idea this is not going to be like a normal rock and roll record. This is not going to be like a normal country record or anything that has, this is not going to have a common structure to it. The subject matter immediately, the density of the lyrics of this was like, we were mentioning Bob Dylan, in a much different fashion before the show. But if you were to take like Bob Dylan lyrics, but first you pumped him full of like existential dread and acid, I feel like you end up with something similar to what Geordie Greep has written here lyrically, like throughout this album. There is so much intensity with the lyrics. There's so much novelty. I feel like that was such a good way to describe it too, because you have that like theater musical side of things, and kind of the way that songs are structured. It's not a normal, it's a very narrative form of songwriting rather than a like emotional or an expressive or kind of esoteric version of it. I feel like you get the same thing. What it kept bringing me back to was like Dee Snider in his cover of Mac the Knife, where it's just like this kind of theater style singing and theater style production, but with a kick-ass band and or like musicality behind it. You got a lot of jazz in this. There was some like, I wouldn't say there was anything that was metal, but definitely some things skewing towards punk. And in Holy Holy in particular, I remember my handy dandy little notebook here. First time I've like taken actual notes on an album in a long time. But the like breakdown before they kick into the last like quarter of the song in Holy Holy, and it's like the harmonized lyrics. It sounds like he's got an like whole ass choir up there with him. I mean, that song for me is where this album like really got steaming, and from there it just did not stop. You get through, we were supposed to have Tanner on this episode, and I feel like there's a lot of things that he would add to the conversation. I don't know, did he like this album?
He did. He specifically
Okay.
instructed me to talk about how much he liked it, and I was very tempted to say he trashed it, and then we could trash him.
we should have done that. Yeah, he is the Patsy of the pod today.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's the Patsy Parisi, and if he could hear that, he'd be furious.
I'm
not Patsy Parisi.
But you have songs like Holy Holy and the New Sound, and Bongo Season, that truly are, very energetic type of songs. And then you get like the last song of the album, If You Are But a Dream, where it sounds like that could have been in like a BioShock video game, where it's like this intentionally retro kind of throwback style song.
Well, it's a Frank Sinatra cover.
Is it a cover? Okay.
Yeah.
I should have realized that, but I mean, the way he does it fits with this. because it's got a
Perfectly.
very theatrical feel to it to go right along with the rest of the album. And I feel like there are some subject matters on this album that are like, I'm glad he's writing in character, and this is hopefully not how this guy actually exists and partakes in real life. But the way that it added to what I felt like was the whole kind of narrative throughout the whole album, and it being a cover, is pretty fantastic. And to have it be that different from a song like Holy Holy, you know, it's got things in common. His massive voice, which is crazy.
Yeah.
We can talk about that too. You probably can break that down a little more as far as like what he's capable of vocally. But having the diversity of music on this album and having it all feel like it's part of the same thing is truly, truly fantastic.
Yeah, and so, like, you start off the top, and I'm not gonna sit here and be, like, the foremost authority on Black MIDI or anything, but you start off with blues, and that for me was like, "Yeah, okay, this is very characteristically Black MIDI," and being the 2nd single, I was like, "Okay, so maybe Holy Holy was kind of a delightful one-off, and the rest of the album's gonna be more in line with what Black MIDI was doing," which is like, "Okay, well, that'll be interesting." Um, and then I really feel like in the run order on this album, blues going first and then everything coming after it kind of breaks with that sound. And I don't think it's a statement piece either, being like, Black MIDI is dead, long live Geordie Greep.
Mm-mm.
But I think it's interesting that it starts feeling distinctly like a Black MIDI album and then like very quickly starts to take on its own identity. By the end of, I guess, like, to not be an asshole to call it Terra, but like Terra, Terra, Terra. It's this like cool island song. It's got this very appropriately enough, he recorded a bunch of this in Brazil because it has a lot of that like Latin flair, world music sound
Mm-hmm.
to it. It's also extremely jazzy. There are like specific references, and you're gonna hate probably every single one of them. Maybe one I don't think you have an axe to grind, but I hear Frank Zappa all over this with the way that a lot of the instrumentation is used, a lot of the
Brother,
digressions, a lot of the like creative
brother.
shit.
Let me tell you another note I took here. Not to sorry to interrupt you, but it's
No,
very
no.
relevant to what you were saying. I said Geordie Greep might be my Frank Zappa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, coming from a noted asshole, which of course is what Frank Zappa fans are called, an unkindness of ravens, a murder of crows, an asshole of Frank Zappa fans. Um, it's you definitely hear like that kind of compositional instinct in it. So like Frank Zappa's a composer, not a rock star. Say that all the time. So you get kind of that the composer is in there, but then also same thing with Steely Dan. I know you don't want to hear it, but Steely Dan's smudgy little fingerprints are kind of like all running through this thing. On a song like Holy Holy, I sent it to 3 separate people unprompted, and they all said it's like punk Steely Dan. It's like Steely Dan on Angel Dust. Um,
It's like Steely Dan if they were good.
it's like Steely Dan if they were good, exactly, because Steely Dan is great. Lawyered. Yeah, no, but then I hear a lot of Talking Heads, or like maybe more like David Byrne. You hear some like fucking Pat Metheny in this. I hear my weird Japanese jazz, acid jazz stuff in it. There's so much going on song to song, all tied together by this character, the like anxious millennial Lothario, like terminally horny, like very desperate, very lonely, but also very like profound when he wants to be kind of character, narrating out loud stream of consciousness. Like I love the lines like, "Have you ever watched a woman give birth to a goat?" That's bravery. Or all of the stuff in Holy Holy where it's like, "I want you to dress like a sophisticated tart." There's just like wonderful lyrical lines like that and musical concepts to back them up. This could have been goofy and gimmicky, and it's not. Keep in mind, I really liked 100 Gex,
Mm-hmm.
10,000 Gex, I guess was the album. Um, In this economy, 10,000 gex, I don't think so. What they're doing is like such a different talent and such a different
Mhm.
method, which is just like creating that music from scratch, like creating the instrumentation from scratch. It's not necessarily the most complex thing, it's just kind of creative and, dare I say, whimsical. But like
Mhm.
Geordie Greep, this is like layers on layers on layers. You have like 30 different session musicians on this. You listen to like how much dimension a song like Holy Holy has, where you just hear all of these things happening at once. Every time you listen, you key in on a new thing. Like you were saying, the harmonies. If I'm not mistaken, that's Geordie Greep harmonizing with himself. Um, and yeah, like you said, he's got this like totally weird vocal delivery. You can't necessarily call it a pretty voice, but it is his fucking instrument, and he uses his judo well, to quote the
Mhm. See,
Mrs. Democracy
I
guy.
think his voice is perfect for this stuff.
Hmm.
You know, I think he does have, I mean, at least it sounded to me like a very powerful voice, you know, and definitely sang with just, I mean, I know the things he was writing in this album are absolutely ridiculous in a lot of ways. You know, it's very satirical, you know, and kind of describing this kind of crazy, outlandish situation to really bring attention to a certain kind of emotional, you know, fallibility that some of us may have or some, you know, so he definitely does a great job with that kind of stuff. Um, I liked your mentioning 100 gex because I thought of them too. You know, it's funny how we kind of got the same things out of this, even though I think you and I come from very different sides of this type of music. You know, I think I'm coming at it from the fact that it's kind of punky. You know, there's definitely some funny lyrics, there's some novelty to it, powerful vocals. Like those are the things I'm really interested in. And you know, you love the, you know, the Frank Zappa composer versus rock star. I feel like you like a much different approach to making the songs themselves. 100 gex to me is like a lemon seltzer water, and Geordie Greep is like a full flavored Dr. Pepper.
Wow.
You know, like
Damn.
it's just you have, they're both great. One is a nice light, easy breezy kind of drink. Dr. Pepper, you got to mean it. You know, you got to be ready for that.
Yeah. Number two soda in the nation. You don't dick around with Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, it just took the title from Pepsi. That's got, man, imagine working at Pepsi, being that kind
Dark
of a
day.
loser.
Dark day.
Yeah. Do you think there's a guy from Pepsi that lives next to a guy that works for Coke, and the guy from Coke just looks down on him?
Statistically, there has to be. And if not, there should totally be a sitcom
Yeah. Like
of
it's just
like,
like, oh, it's okay, little buddy.
yeah.
You know, the Pepsi guy's got the manual lawnmower,
Yeah.
and the Coke guy like hired a lawn service.
Yeah. That's right. They've all got zero turns and all the latest gadgets.
Well, I digress. But yeah, I feel like that's a good comparison of like the 100 gex versus the Geordie Greep. Um, but what I really, I got a lot of, and I can't remember who were the ones that wrote like the Mac the Knife, the Three Penny Opera.
Kurt Vile wrote the music. Not Kurt Vile, Vile. Kurt Vile, Weill.
Oh, I was gonna say that's a, how old is Kurt Vile? Like I was like, isn't
Ancient.
that a really yeah, it's like, isn't that a really old play? He'd have to be like very old.
Yeah.
Like Dante's been into Kurt Vile for 6 decades now, I guess.
Dante's also old as fuck.
Yeah.
He's older than the
But what
dirty
I
sleepster.
really, I heard so, I don't know if this is something he meant to put in there or if it's really he just meant it to be jazzy and that's the way the lyrics fit, is that it gave it a very theater kind of style. But do you know if he has a theater background or anything at all?
I don't know for sure, but he's a young man. He's 25. I don't know. I want to say no purely because I think a lot of his efforts went to that scene, which, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm like confusing totally different time periods and movements or whatever. But if I'm not mistaken, it's a movement called Canterbury Prague. So it's like
Okay.
very specific prog rock, but you definitely hear the proggy stuff more with Black Midi than here. Although,
Mhm.
again, Prog's fucking smudgy little fingerprints are all over this
Oh yeah.
too. Um, and it's just I will say this, and this is going to sound potentially pretentious. Which if we could title the episode, that would be amazing. So I'll drop a dime in the douchebag jar if I have to, but having been like involved in making music now, and not like I've been in the studio with Jack Antonoff and he came on to me, he put his hand on my knee. That makes me special. Like
Allegedly.
allegedly, allegedly,
Yeah.
allegedly. But so I don't want, again, I don't want to like oversell the level, but I also don't want to undersell the professionalism, whether or not they're doing it for a livelihood, the professionalism of the people that I'm working with, Tanner, Rory, Eric, Zach. So do we think we're making like world ender stuff? No, but we're making music, writing it from scratch. And I got to tell you, someone like Eric, Latrell, Laser Dad, Phantom Airwave, you guys know the drill. He's got that composer mindset. And then you have someone like Zach, who's very gifted with music theory. And then you have me, Tanner, and Rory, who are kind of coming in with the weird loose stuff on top. So there's a lot of structure, and then there's a lot of like play and flourishes. So like having seen what goes into that is a long way of saying, while you're building those layers and like creating a song from the ground up, it reinforces just how much I love composers and composer oriented rock musicians. Steely Dan, Frank Zappa, Geordie Greep. It just like reinforces for me that that's the shit. It can span genres. This is kind of the epiphany right now. Spanning genres, country, pop, rock, jazz, what have you. It's the composer mindset, the composer approach that gets me every single time. So I can enjoy a balls out rock star or a pop star like Sabrina Carpenter, but what gets me right at my nougaty little core is a composer, and Geordie Greep is composer shit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that, and I'm glad you mentioned country. There's a little 1 minute, just about a minute long little country snippet
Yep.
on this album, and it's hysterical. It's on the song Walk Up, and it's like the last little bit of it. It's like probably a 6-minute song or something like that. But he does this, they kind of cut out the main part of the song, and then you just have this like somebody stuck a microphone in the middle of a party and people are yelling at each other. You kind of get that like ambient noise sort of feel, and then he starts playing this country song. Ain't got no friends, ain't got a frown. I am unhappy, and that's the truth. I got 2 words: fuck you. Like just out of nowhere, and then right back to the jazzy goodness. Like it was just such a weird. It felt like I was in a cartoon car, and it was driving way too fast. And when it was going around the corners, it was like up on 2 wheels. Just like the whole thing felt. It went right in with that like novelty feel, that kind of just comical type of feel throughout the whole thing. So the music felt very lighthearted, felt very like energetic, felt very much like you were on a trip somewhere, like you were going somewhere. It felt like you were in fast forward almost. It's just like a very, very cool feeling. But then you start to get into the lyrics and the lyrical content. And a song that specifically, I mean, I was kind of noticing it the whole way through, but the song that absolutely stopped me in my tracks when I like really was listening to the lyrics is The Magician. So I feel like The Magician is the song where kind of like, for whatever amount of like a character there is throughout this album, and I don't know if it's necessarily a concept album, but I do think there is a lot of commonality throughout a lot of these songs as far as the narrative goes. And kind of maybe that's just him unpacking his craziest thoughts and like putting them onto a character to like get them out into the world so he doesn't do it himself. Could be any number of reasons for those things, but like The Magician specifically, the first verse: you drop a kid in gasoline and give him a lit match and slap him on the ass when he lights himself aflame. I mean, just very, very like clever turns of phrase. So you almost hear that, like we always talk about it in country music, like Casey Musgraves, like a very funny little line, the way that he says it, but very serious what he's talking about. Like the man who pays his wife 200 pounds to have sex because it's the only way he can come. And it's like you have to think about that a little bit to understand. It's like, wait, he's paying his wife, so he wants it to be like it's not his wife, and it's just like it takes you a second to get through those layers of it. Like the girl born a princess too early or too late, who waits and waits and knows she'll never be queen. Like just these little slices of life that he dips into in that first verse, and it's all things that you can picture it exactly. Like that's that theatrical feel to me, is because when you go see like a musical production, a lot of times when they're singing, they're not singing like an abstract type of song. They're kind of singing what they're doing. And I think he does a lot of that in this album, or at least like what this character is doing, and that's why it gives me that feel. And the way that everything just builds and builds and builds throughout all these songs, like he never lets you know where he's going with any of it, but it doesn't sound like any of it is out of place. And it's just such a cool on an album that was over an hour long, Alex. We haven't even mentioned that part yet.
That is correct.
Like we're on here, at least I am all the time, where it's like if it's a quick 35, 40 minutes, I'm like, that's perfect for me. This album was over an hour and I wasn't ready for it to be done.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. Because one of the things is exactly what you're talking about, is that theatricality. It's a very visual album. It's a very like it has a style, it has a depth. Like I picture just like a lot of like soft lighting, but also like a lot of neon, a lot of colors, a lot of depth to it. Like it's incredible how many like other senses and also like imagination that this engages when you listen to it. So an hour slips by in like 5 minutes and you're left being like, oh shit. Specifically Holy Holy, not to beat it to death and be obvious and be like, well, the first single, but I've had so much time to hammer it. You
Mm-hmm.
can't listen to it once. You have to do a minimum of twice. And if you're being
Mm-hmm.
safe, you should probably just do it 3 times.
Yeah. And absolutely do it with headphones on.
100%.
Like this was an album. So I will always like I'll always sit down and give like a dedicated, like that's all I'm doing is listening to the album. Like I'll give it a listen, every one that we do. But then the other times I listen to it, generally it's going to be like, well, I'm cleaning the house and I'll put on headphones, or if I'm like got to drive somewhere and I'll listen to it in the car, I'll listen to it a couple different ways, throughout that. I always give one dedicated one. Well, I'll tell you what, I gave the dedicated one to this one the first time through. But when I listened to it again I think it was the third time today while I was cleaning the house this morning, I'll tell you what, I was bopping around the house, shaking my hips, cleaning up. I had a blast. And then the album was done. And I was like, I didn't want that to be over. It's
Go
just
again.
once again, it's just really is that good. I think if you're somebody that likes a more theatrical kind of experience, if you're somebody that likes musicals and you want something that's a little bit grittier, something that's going to go a little bit more into the psychosis of man, I think this is a very good option. I think I don't even know. Do you think so what I'm wondering, I guess, is the magician, is that the character like that he's referencing in the rest of the songs? Is that the sense you got?
I can see that. I weird like you can make the argument that it's following like a character and being kind of cagey about it. I think in certain instances I created kind of like separate characters, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Um but I can see that argument about the magician. Yeah, absolutely.
Like I'm wondering if like the magician is just the box that he put all the problems into. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and that's the magician is who he's using to spread this stuff out, basically.
Yeah, and I know like when people want to be critical of something, they're like, "Oh, it's busy. That pattern's awfully busy."
Yeah.
The Magician's a busy song in that it has a lot to do.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the highlights. I love Through a War is great. Walk Up right before it is great. Bongo Season, mixed reviews on that one, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fucking obnoxious and repetitive and fun and great. Um, As If Waltz, every song is so memorable because like I don't want to like suddenly dunk on Sabrina Carpenter in hindsight, especially when she has nothing to do with this. But it was fewer songs on that that were like the
Mhm.
standouts to me, even though I enjoyed them all and enjoyed them all in context. Some of them I just kind of left on the album. And then there was a handful I took with me. This is the kind of thing where, again, absent Holy Holy, just because I've been riding with it for so long, you kind of don't want to hear the rest without the rest of the album. You hear it all
Mhm.
together. You just want to crush this album because every single song has so much personality
Yeah.
and it all just fits together so beautifully. Again, it's a composer's dream. Hits me right in the square of my little cold dead heart. Um, if you hadn't guessed by now, it's an obvious buy it. I
Oh
hope
yeah.
it exists on vinyl already. Obvious buy it.
Yeah. It's absolutely going to be a buy it. And and I think for the general population, I think it's going to be a buy it. I think this is going to make him more popular than Black Midi.
I think, yeah, honestly, I think so too, just because it's so different and it's so interesting. And, we'll always have Black Midi.
Hmm.
But again, I can't sit here and be like, oh, yeah, big, big Black Midi guy. So I'm sure for other people, it's fucking devastating. And to them, you've probably said something controversial, but in my opinion, yes, I think it's too weird. It's too wonderful. It's too creative and interesting for people
Hmm.
not to glom onto it.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic experience. I will say everybody should give this one a try. I think I will understand if you don't love it because it's a lot. It's very overstimulating. It's an overwhelming amount of information that is pumping through those speakers. But I've always thought of, there's two kinds of people. There's people that generally have a quiet mind in which music like this is something they enjoy because that's their balance, right? If somebody has a just very complicated mind and very anxiety ridden mind, this kind of music probably not going to be great. They'll want something a little softer that they can, that has some gaps that need to be filled in. This is fully fleshed out. There's nothing missing here. This is the kind of album where if you want to see what's possible, you want those clouds to open up so you can see the cogs of the universe. This is the kind of album that you want to listen to because it's going to blow your mind. If you're willing to let it happen, this album is going to blow your mind.
Come on, y'all. Become a Greep creep, a creepy Greep, just like us. We're keeping it creepy, keeping it 55th.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And did you have any other closing thoughts for this week, Alex?
No, I did not. I just want to end on this like aggressively enthusiastic praise about Geordie Greep.
And out of nowhere, out of
Yeah,
absolutely nowhere. Like I had seen, I think we mentioned before, I don't know if I'd mentioned it during the actual recording, but I'd seen like a tweet about it or something that you had done your reaction to it. And then I'd seen that Fantano had done it on the world's busiest music nerd or something, right? Is that what
the needle drop.
the needle drop? Yeah, I don't know why I blanked on the name. Like that's what it shows everywhere, whatever it was. But I saw that he had done a review of the album, and I didn't go look at it because I knew at that point we were going to do it. But out of nowhere, I had never even heard of them. Like I'd heard a couple of things from Black Midi, like not a whole lot at all. So this was completely out of nowhere for me, and probably the biggest surprise of the year so far.
What a treat. What a treat.
Yeah,
You can bet when I'm drafting up my year-end list that you'll be hearing from this one again.
yeah, yeah. I think and it's in a good spot. October, we're getting close to that year-end list.
That's right.
That's crazy to think about.
That's pretty crazy to think
Yeah,
about. I remember filming the best and worst of 2023 like it was yesterday.
yeah. Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming, Alex.
Tell you what. And I've been picking white synthetic Santa beard hairs out of my fucking crack of my ass for the last year.
Yeah, yeah.
You
That's
know?
how she goes. Yeah, that's
Yep.
how she. I'm creeping up on 40. We're getting there.
Yep.
We're getting there. But folks, you can see last year's best and worst. You can see the previous year's best and worst. You can see the previous year to that's best and worst. And I think there's even another previous year to that. I think 2020 was the first year that we did it. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I just think there's only 2 visual ones. There was last year in 2022.
Oh, yes. Well, you can go on other services and get that first one. The last 2 you'll find right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe while you're down there, and we'll see you next time.